Oh, welcome back, and let's bring Steve back in, shall we? How cross-eyed are you? Did you go and get that drink I recommended?
No, do you know what? Because I don't want to be. I got to be on shape to actually work out the state of this nation. I'm a little bit worried if I have a good night off, the next thing you know, we'll wake up and we'll be in some sort of hellscape.
I have a feeling you're probably going to think you've necked a few too many tequilas after I tell you about this story, because you know we've been through the everything's racist period, haven't we? You know, the countryside, that's a bit racist. I was watching the other day and someone said that the healthy eating pyramid was racist. I think it was in the Welsh Assembly. It's like, well, you know, all those ethnic minorities, they love a bit of rice, they do. That pyramid don't suit them. It's just like, oh my God, everything is racist. But not only is it enough for everything to be racist, everyone now has to be black. The people who built Stonehenge, they were black. And now it turns out, and this is actually one of my favourite stretches of all time, this is absolutely hilarious, that apparently not only was Shakespeare black, he was also Jewish, he was also a woman. I mean, we actually knew that Shakespeare was a bisexual. I've studied Shakespeare, and, you know, at least he ticks the LGBTQ box. But what we're going to find out is a paraplegic next as well. I mean, for crying out loud. This is a story by some woman who's written a book saying that he was actually a historical figure called Emilia Bassano, based upon, as far as I can tell, reading all of this, apropos of absolutely nothing. And the fact that Shakespeare became so famous for, I don't know, being the bard was because that they all loved the idea of white genius and didn't like Bassano's identity as a black female playwright. This was blimmin' Tudor England, for crying out loud. I don't think they were sitting there doing the whole DEI stuff.
It is so good. So look, as a bald man from the Midlands, he's my guy, right? It's the category that I belong to. So what I love about this story is, right, if you try and unpick it and go, okay, what's your evidence for this? What evidence are you making? The evidence that they're making is, well, if people didn't like it, then that would be racist. Wait a minute, that's just it's a circular argument, isn't it? This is racist because people didn't like it, and therefore that's racist, which proves the past was racist and I'm right. There's no evidence for this at all. That somehow, and also what's really offensive is they say, people can't work out why this poorly educated guy from the Midlands managed to write well. Oh, so we can have a go at the bad education, the class thing. This idiot, we shouldn't give any credit to this idiot who managed to do well, but clearly it must have been someone else and he nicked all the work from it. There's nothing left. This is why we can't have nice things, isn't it? When they're coming for Shakespeare, they've reached the end of the game.
It does feel like the end times of you know, DEI, when you suddenly got Shakespeare's actually a black Jewish woman. But you know what I find so astonishing about this is, I'm sorry, evidentially, there's stacks of it there. You know, we're not talking about some sort of time in sort of, you know, the 9th century BC that we're not quite sure where these magical sonnets came from. So, you know, historically, they've been attributed to some white man. There were other people writing things down, you know, newspaper articles. He was there knocking about in Elizabeth's court. It's not, we've got the evidence. We've got the primary source material that we know that Shakespeare existed. Maybe every now and then he might have nicked an idea or two. I don't know. I'm not beyond suggesting that perhaps the odd sonnet was written by his mate because he was a bit too, I don't know, too far gone after being down the tavern. But the idea that he just wasn't even himself, that he was a black Jewish woman, it's the most crazy thing I ever heard. And actually, it's so crazy, it's so farcical that Shakespeare himself could have written it. It reminds me of that film, Shakespeare in Love, you know. Which one is it with old, the Oberon and all that? Is that Midsummer Night's... No, it's not a Midsummer Night's Dream with all the sort of cross-dressing actors and actresses. It's that other one. I did study it at some point, but I can't remember. It's the 2126. The brain is not focused on the former degree. But it is actually quite Shakespearean in its sort of irony and wit.
Yeah. It would be similar to the level of farce that goes into like a comedy of errors. If you have someone who just turns up, you know, with a different hat on them, and do you know what? I can't help but think that if someone's expecting William Shakespeare to turn up to a place and a black Jewish woman turns up, someone would have noticed and written that down. It feels like the kind of thing you'd mention. You know, you'd be like, and the idea that some of his works might have been, you know, the idea might have been inspired from elsewhere. You can't really hold that against anyone who's written that much work. George Harrison from the Beatles got sued a couple of times for not nicking but borrowing heavily inspiration from other songs. But it doesn't mean that George Harrison from the Beatles was a black Jewish woman. And that's a sentence I never thought I'd have to say out loud.
Do you know, I never thought I'd have to say out loud that William Shakespeare is a black Jewish woman, but there we have it. And I just want to pick up on something that you said earlier, which is, you know, to get slightly serious about this, it really does aggrieve me, the idea that he couldn't have written it because he was a sort of working class man. Because, you know, in these days, we sort of trip over ourselves, especially the left wing often trip over themselves to sort of shout about their working class credentials. My father was a tool maker. Oh, I used to collect shopping trolleys. Oh, I know how to pull a pint or two. And I was making this point online the other day that I think, and I'm not a big fan of his music, right? I'm not. But I honestly think that one of the best writers of verse that this era has ever seen is Eminem. I'm not a big fan of Eminem. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not. But when I listen, because my dissertation at university was all about the scansion of the sonnet form. In fact, it was called the diachronic development of the sonnet form. No, diachronic analysis of the sonnet. Anyway, it's all about scansion and iambs and dactylic hexameter and caesuras and all these, you know, things that the sonnet form uses to become such this perfect 14-line product, which Shakespeare, I think, perfected it more than anyone. And knowing all the sort of nitty-gritty of rhyme and verse and how difficult it is to do unless you are a genius, and if you can do it like Shakespeare, you can just bash them out all the time. Do you know what I mean? It's like those people who solve Sudokus in 2 seconds and can quote every digit of pi from memory. If you've got it, you've got it. And when I listen to Eminem rap, I'm like, I don't really like his music, but that dude can do it. He was from a trailer park.
Yeah, it's a different part of the brain, isn't it? This is the people get confused where natural talent and practicing and education, those things, they're two separate things and they reinforce each other. But there are some people who, doesn't matter which schools they go to, will never be that good at writing poetry, and some people who are naturally gifted, and if they put effort into it, it becomes even better. But it doesn't necessarily require that you need to be someone from the West Midlands who had a good education. You can't rule out the fact that someone who, he worked in finance, or he was a moneylender or something for a while. Finances, I think I Rachel Reeves that a bit, didn't I? I really upsold that. But so he did a bit of money lending, therefore can't know how to do a bit of rhyming. What? It's ridiculous. The linguistic part of the brain is more gifted in other people than others. So look, even if you find a reason to say I don't think he managed to write all of those things, it is a heck of a leap to say, well, therefore he must be black. And why? Because if he was black, they would have buried it, wouldn't they? I
mean, also, as someone who has heavily studied Shakespeare's sonnets in particular, the man would use something called inversion. He'd switch words around a bit like Yoda. He actually invented new words. He did the foreshortening of words. You know, when a poet comes with just a cheeky little sort of apostrophe in the middle of a word for air. Instead of forever. He did that all the time to make it fit the scansion. He was basically a rap artist. All these snobby people at universities who sort of say, oh, Shakespeare, blah, blah, blah. In his era, he was a proper sort of little, you know, scallywag, got the gift of the gab. He was the one who said, you know, when he had his plays put on in the Globe Theatre, I just want all the poor people to be able to come and they can just stand at the bottom of the floor. I mean, he was everything when it comes to a working class genius. And it really gets on my nerves that the excuse being used to turn him into a black woman is the fact that he wasn't rich or didn't go to a university. I find it deeply offensive.
In his day, he was such a good rapper that Keir Starmer probably would have made a TikTok video with him as the music.
Oh, absolutely. Starmer would have been all over that. A bit of green sleeves, a bit of, like, you know, lyrical badmanship with some Shakespeare sonnets in the background. Talking about offensive. Now, I can understand why, you know, you sort of say, well, that was acceptable in the 60s, but not so much now when it comes to certain elements of comedy. And, you know, even I find every now and then when you watch things, you just think, gosh, wow, we got away with a lot back then, didn't we? But this is probably the most ridiculous trigger warning thus far, which is apparently a classic war comedy starring Sir Norman Wisdom, which is a 1958 farce called The Square Peg, never heard of it, who's been given a trigger warning because it mocks Germans.
It's so good, isn't it? Now, firstly, any Norman Wisdom stuff, I remember watching it as a kid, all these things. I think I've watched The Square Peg. I saw some clips, and a lot of it's coming back to me, but it was a long time ago. I'm getting old now. These are some of the least offensive films you ever could be made, because back in those days, there was such restriction on what you could actually put in a film. So the idea of the only slightly rude thing is mocking Germans, saying that officers in the German army might be a bit pompous. If you need a trigger warning for that, firstly, why have we started defending Nazis? I used to know the way the world worked. The bad guys, you could have a go at those, but now you have to not say mean things about Nazis during the Second World War. Okay, we really are in the end times, aren't we? But the idea that you need a trigger warning on it, you know, when you start watching it and it's a black and white film, and you could, if you wanted to check, you could see what year it came out. If you don't understand that the year it came out might be the thing that dates it, could you get all of these trigger warnings that said it has outdated? You can work out what's outdated by knowing the year you're in now and the year something was made. Why do we have to then spell it to you again, just in case you might be offended on behalf of the Nazis during the Second World War?
It's just mad. If you can't mock the Germans, pray tell, who on earth can you mock in this one? I'd love to know what some sort of person of this era would make of "Allo, allo."
Yes, true. Yeah, even that would have to have. And yet, all of it was none of it was the meant to be damaging humour. None of this is vicious, is it? This is just, oh, if you're really oversensitive, you might find a way. And I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into it. You might find a way to be offended. I've often said, if you need to Google to find out why something's offensive, you're not offended by it. You know, these people are outraged by a statue. You think, well, no one's really worked out who they are. Why are you going around doing deep research, deep dives to see if anything in someone's past from the 1800s is something you disagree with? It's like archaeology for offence, isn't it? They're going around trying to mine things. So this film, I'm sure you could have put it on, and there's not a genuine person who would have watched it and been surprised by any of the things that... It's a war film. It mentions the war. How is that going to surprise anyone? There is no need for this trigger warning.
Oh, there's no need for any trigger warning, in my opinion. No doubt if some sort of leftist watches back this segment, it will be covered in them, because you have been absolutely sensational, as I expected. No holds barred. I love you to bits. Steve, Mysterious N. Allen, please do come back on.
See you soon.
What is that N for? That's what I want to know. What is that N? Maybe it's Steve Nazi Allen. Yeah? Yeah? Do you think he's triggered now? Righto.